Hey, I'm Mark Beebe. I'm the Director of Recovery at Cokesbury. It's great to be with you tonight. Thanks for joining what we're doing here and for being a part of this. I want to welcome people in our various locations also into what we're doing. A couple things I want to make sure you know, and that is that tonight following this conversation, we're going to be having some open share groups. We have a women's open share recovery group and a men's open share recovery group. They start at 8 o'clock. And you can go to recovery at Cokesbury, Cokesbury.com, and you can see the links for those groups right there. Also, on Thursday nights at 6 o'clock, we do a group that we have called Family and Friends Compulsion Education. If you have somebody in your life that is struggling with something that's bigger than they are, whatever it is, this is a great group for you to learn as much as we can possibly get into you in a month's time about what are the basics of understanding compulsion. What does healthy support look like? What does enabling look like? Why is it that we understand compulsion to be a disease and not a behavioral issue? And what kind of resources are available for recovery for you and for the person that you love or care about, the person in your life that is going through that kind of a struggle? I think it's a very helpful group and would encourage you, if you're going through something like that, to be a part of it again Thursdays at 6 o'clock, recovery at Cokesbury.com. You'll find the link there. And again, the two groups tonight, same place, women's recovery, men's recovery, following this get-together. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Craig Billingsley, who I've known a long time. I'm going on 11 years now, and I've known Craig the whole time. Used to work with us here at Cokesbury and has since retired. But a couple things are going to happen tonight. One is, this is going to be a talk about, and you'll see how it unfolds here in a minute, but one is, we're going to do this talk that I'm calling 4,745 days. That equates to 13 years. And the reason I'm calling it that is I want to be able to give Craig this chip. And man, this is for 13 years tonight, clean and sober. And I want to thank you for that opportunity to give you that chip. And what Craig and I are going to talk about tonight is the topic of what does it take to get to 4,745 days clean and sober. All those days weren't great days. All those days weren't easy days. It didn't necessarily, and I think this is something people don't understand, it doesn't necessarily come easier on the 3,000th day. And some of the same tools that you needed to learn and use to get to your 30th day or your 13th day or your third day are tools that you need to watch mature and that you need to use on your 4,000th day. And I think sometimes we want to believe that there's a magic point. It's 6 years, it's 7 years, it's 10 years, it's whatever, where you know what? You just sort of got this mastered, and you just are sober now, and so that's a permanent fixture, and there's no real, like there's no real work involved. And
right.
like with recovery, what we do here at Cokesbury, we obviously see people that believe, that I'm going to go to recovery, Cokesbury, whatever, get involved in AA, Al-Anon, SA, whatever it is, and I'm going to do that long enough to be able to get over my immediate malady. And when I feel better and like I'm the master of my own destiny again, when I feel like I'm in control of this again, you know what? I'm pretty much through that, and I'm going to see that as a bad experience, a tough time for me, kind of like going to the doctor, like a medical model. But you know what? Now, like I'm all fixed up, and kind of like if my leg was broken, I'm all fixed up and I'm really going to be okay. The issue is, the truth of this is, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, there's no similarity between the medical model of my broken leg and your 4,745 days of recovery, right?
Correct.
There's nothing about that that's similar.
They don't match up at all.
Doesn't match up at all. There's no, well, I got to get this fixed, and once I get it fixed, well, then it was like a bad dream, and life goes on. So I have several things I want to talk to you about that have to do with this along that longer road. And one of the realities is, and I know you would speak to, I want you to speak to this, but true or false that it's actually, you found it much harder to stay sober and grow that sobriety after, let's say, year 3 than you did in year 1.
That's absolutely true. One of the things that they tell you when you first start is the first year's a gift. Second year, the work starts. I happen to believe that to be true. After 3 years of doing the same thing over and over again, if it's a job or, a hobby, and you've built all the models that you want to, or you've played all the golf you want to, or whatever it is, then you start looking for something different. With our mindset as alcoholics, we still revert back to what we used to know. I drank alcoholically for probably 20 years, maybe longer. And so that's in there. My blood chemistry has changed. That's still there. That will never go away. So you have to really double down. Make sure you're doing your daily program, hitting your meetings, doing your journal, talking to your sponsor, whatever your program is that has got you to those 3 years, do it again. Renew it. Update it. See if there's some things that you're missing that you've been sliding on to bring that back so it's fresh again.
Like, is it true that I've heard people say to me, well, I already did a step study. It's like, you did a step study. When did you do it? Well, I did it within the first year and a half or whatever of getting sober. You got 6 years now. Have you ever done another step study? I haven't. Like, what's the deal with that? How would that be just completely unhelpful? Like, what about that is completely unhelpful?
Well, part of it is that you have progressed.
Exactly.
You have moved up. And when you read it or go through the steps again in a group setting, the steps have a different connotation, a different meaning to you, and you approach them in a different way. That's I've heard Ginger, my wife, say that she'll read a Bible verse and then read it again and go, oh, well, that's completely different than what I thought the first time. If you look at a painting, why do we look at a painting more than once? Because you see different things each time. You read a novel. I thought, why do I have to read this thing 2 or 3 times in college? Because each time you pick up something different. Mm-hmm. You watch a movie a second time. You see stuff that's there that you didn't see the first time. And that is the growth. And that's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Exactly. So one of the things that I think comes into longer term sobriety is an understanding of the activity of resilience. Like when in my early compulsion of codependency, I was not resilient at all. I mean, every day was a crisis. Every day was a day that I felt like I was up against it. Every day was another difficult burden to be able to get through. And I felt like a lot of days between what was happening with me and trying to take care of the girls and what was happening with my first wife, I felt like every one of those days was a make it or break it day. And I did not necessarily feel, despite people giving you that direction, I did not necessarily feel like I was going to get through it. Despite someone saying to me, it's going to be okay, I did not necessarily feel like it was going to be okay. And I listened to people politely, but I really spent more time than not feeling like all hell was about to break loose. And so my resiliency at that time in my life was like pretty much zero. I didn't have that sense of being able to stick to it and realize that I was going to sort of stick to it and get through it. I really didn't have that, and it was a lot of crisis living. And so I wanted to ask you, like, how have you built up resiliency to adversity in your life?
The difference, one of the differences between the codependent and the one who has the compulsion is that I don't really care if you're worried about me or not. So my focus would be on me, which becomes, if you will, selfish, but it's building back your self-worth. And so if you hit a wall, that you can bounce off and find another way around it. So it's a matter of learning that if you mess up, it's okay. Start back up, go again. Dr. Bob, one of the writers of the Big Book, founder of AA, relapsed. I mean, he messed up big time. So he went back and then started all over. First step, started all over and ran through it. And from then on, for the rest of his life, was sober. So, I mean, if he can mess up, I certainly can. And I can recover from my relapse. So I can start it up again and start from the very beginning, step one, and march through it. Do it with your sponsor, all that. Go to meetings, admit when you were wrong, and start all over again. And it's amazing how forgiving, it's always there, but to realize how forgiving God is. It's okay with him. You keep trying, you keep in touch with me, talk to me every day, and together we get through this. I can't be whipped. Just stay with me.
And I think for me, the critical factor in that was, in having no resiliency, was I was determined I was going to do it by myself and nobody else was going to know.
Right.
I was determined that the isolation was necessary because of what you said. My sense of myself was so low that I didn't really want anybody else involved. I wasn't going to come to you and go, man, I'm really struggling with this. How would you do this? What am I not? Right. I wasn't asking for your set of eyes. What am I not seeing?
Right.
And like you just said, everything doesn't have to be okay. Everything just has to, you just got to get through. Sometimes you just got to get through. Sometimes it's just got to be enough. It's just got to be enough, not perfect. And that standard I hold myself to in compulsion, since everything else is intense, that standard's too intense.
Right.
And I think that's a big deal. Second, and I want to talk about this relative to emotion, but second piece of how do you grow to 4,700 some days sober and serene, peaceful, is what about the idea of delayed gratification? Like, was it true that when you were actively drinking, your need for gratification was immediate 100% of the time?
Exactly.
Okay. And so it's true that if you had a bad feeling, you were going to modify that feeling by getting loaded. You were going to do that, or you were going to do it right now because it was your life and you could do what you wanted to.
Right. I earned it. I earned it.
You earned it. So when you started to get sober, and let's think about year 4 or whatever in there, when you started to really begin to live this out, how did you handle that deal of, man, I'm really not an island to myself, and I really don't need to act on my immediate emotions, good or bad, right now? How did you learn that examination of my emotions process?
About the only way I can come up with an explanation is that during those first 3 or 4 years, you do 12-step work, okay? The first year, not too much, but then you get into it, and you talk to people, and you say, well, this is what I did. Maybe it'll help you. And as you talk to different people, or you're in a group, and you say, well, this is what I did, you become accountable to each and every one of those people in that group, or any group, or standing out in the lobby, or at the grocery store. I met a guy when I was buying a car. He was a used car salesman, and we talked about it. I think he actually came one time. But the idea is that I don't want to be a fraud anymore. I don't want to be a liar anymore. So if I'm saying this to a stranger, to a friend, whatever, and then I get caught, or somebody spies me relapsing or becoming the way I was, acting, not necessarily drinking again, but acting like I was drinking, they can call me out on it. Well, I don't want that. I've got 4 years here. I don't want to waste those by, blow all that off by doing something stupid.
And you're freely talking about relapse in a way that I think a lot of people aren't familiar with. Like, most people are going to hear the word relapse and they're going to go, oh, that means he started drinking again. That means he started using again. That means his compulsion, or pornography or whatever, his compulsion of choice was reactivated. It's like, no, you're talking about the complexity of the relapse, where relapse really starts, because nobody's relapse in terms of the use of their compulsion starts the day they decide to pick up whatever their compulsion is.
Exactly.
You've been in the game for a while.
Yeah.
Usually at least 4 to 6 months. And you've been working this out over a period of months to get yourself there. And I think generally we, in the recovery community, we want to benchmark and we want to go,
right.
well, a relapse is the day he did this. It's
right.
like, no, a relapse is when you started thinking from a perspective that is going to enhance, support, and feed, the disease. It's like, here's a quote from a guy, Richard Rohr, who does a lot with 12 steps. He goes, the word emotion comes from the Latin for movement. It's a body-based reaction that snags you quickly and urgently. The body holds shame, guilt, hurts, memories, and childhood conditioning. Emotions feel, which is where I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, and we're going, this is the way I'm feeling. And the beauty of you being my sponsor and me being yours is, I'm going to go, well, Craig, I know you're feeling that way. Is that legitimate? Let's look at that feeling. Where is that coming from? Where is the empty spot in you actually that's causing that emotion? Without me doing that with you or you doing that with me, I'm just going to roll on. That's his point, with emotion. The body holds shame, guilt, hurts, memories, and childhood conditioning. Emotions feel like truth. Like when it feels like nobody wants me, nobody believes in me, nobody supports me, nobody loves me, I can easily by myself make up my mind that emotion is absolutely legitimate. They feel like truth. So it's very hard to unhook from our feelings. This is true for all of us. He says, emotions in and out of themselves have no moral value. They are neither good nor bad, meaning your feeling is just your feeling. The question is, are you going to act on your feeling, not is your feeling your feeling? They're just sirens alerting us to something we should pay attention to. If we learn to listen to them instead of always obeying them, they can be very good teachers. We need to be aware that our emotions can mislead us because we often misread the situation. It's kind of like, since I feel bad, it must be bad. It's like, since I feel bad, do I need to act on the feeling of feeling bad? I do not, because I can come to you and talk about it and I can begin to unravel, why do I feel bad? Or like the big book says, I hated that part when I learned it. I really did not want to hear that. But where it goes, look, if there's a disturbance anywhere in the world, I should probably check myself first. I really, truly dislike that direction. But it is one of the truest things I've ever learned. I should say to myself, what is going on with me to cause me to react this way?
Yeah.
And when I examine me, it's going to give me clarity about what else is really and actually going on around me. But what I like about that is I attend to myself first. I don't know anybody else outside of recovery that knows how to do that.
Right. It's like on an airplane, you put your mask on first and then help people because you're going to fall out. And it's the same way in recovery. If you fall out, you can't help anybody else.
Like your level of, in general, wouldn't you say that one of the things that has increased over 13 years by leaps and bounds is your general level of self-awareness?
Oh, absolutely. I see things. I still don't have a very good filter from brain to mouth, but I see things very clearly after I say them, and sometimes even before I say them. And that has kept me out of some embarrassing situations.
Or felt them.
Or felt them. And to not react immediately to that, a knee-jerk reaction, to wait and then find out what's coming next, that is something that was missing when I was 3 sheets to the wind, a six-pack in, and it was just, you just hear pieces of things and then react.
Yeah.
And it's all emotion.
All emotion.
And there's no reason allowed in there. It's just react right now.
And is it true? You know, it's true that our emotions are a big, huge part of what actually has to get into recovery.
Exactly.
You know, like,
yes.
Until then, we feel like no recovery. I feel like my emotions are the dominating, pervasive piece of my life that cause me to make decisions and react and move in one way or another, one direction or another. I do all of that based on emotions. Since I feel it, I got to do it. You know, it's like recovery goes, no, you feel it, and then you got to talk it through, and then you got to get somebody else involved in it, and then you got to get some clarity about it, and then maybe you'll have some direction. But maybe, in fact, it'll just be an emotion and you won't. You know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I think all that's true. But I mean, I wanted to also talk about, like, tell me how service has impacted the longevity of your sobriety. And what I've noticed about you over knowing you this long is you consistently, usually when you introduce me to somebody you're working with, for whatever reason, over the time I've known you, they're some of the toughest of the tough. And there has to be a reason why you've introduced me to so many really difficult situations with individuals. I mean, and I guess what I'm asking you is it true, am I right, because I never asked this question, am I right that you have sometimes deliberately made yourself available to really difficult, compulsive activity with people?
Right. For whatever reason, I've bumped into people who are just completely off the chain.
Yeah.
And I see that and I start talking with them. And usually I'll get they've been to meetings or had some recovery time in an institution or something, but they've backslid. And so they're using it again, whatever. And it's, there's no point in trying to talk to them any farther with my experience. And maybe it's because I'm sensitive. I can pick what people are saying, that they need to hear it from somebody, if you will, in authority. I have a certain street cred because I've been through it. You know, I've been to the halfway house and all that. But the idea that a pastor or a counselor would spend some time talking with them, and then they can throw them back to me. You know.
But it seems to be valuable to you that you would take on that kind of service that is, for lack of a better way to put it, bigger than you are, where it's going to challenge you to grow more, and it's going to challenge your own recovery principles, and you're willing to, you know, it's that 12th step. You know, you don't start off with the 12th step.
Right.
You live out of the 12th step after years and years of being in the steps.
Right.
And you bring all the other steps to bear into the 12th step. You know, and I see you dedicating yourself to doing that. It's just like people forever will say, you really got to go sit in some beginner meetings. You know, you got to be the one, if you're going to Al-Anon, for example, you got to be the one to spend that hour with that person that's coming that's their first time. You got to be the one to take them aside and go, let me explain to you kind of how all this works, you know, and try to bring some understanding of what we're doing here. You got to be the one to handle work with the beginner, because you got to hear from them what it was like, because you got to make sure you're always remembering where we were, and where we could be,
exactly,
and how close we actually are on any given day to doing it. And that's what I was talking about. If I were to ask you this question, if I were to say to you, tell me the top 3 habits that you have developed that have had the most impact on your sobriety, 13 years, what would those 3 habits be?
Good heavens. Coming to recovery and meetings.
Fellowship.
The support of family, very, very first, but then the community. Again, that kind of kicks it back to the fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
The stronger understanding that I've gotten on how to be a follower of Christ. I remember the Bible was short sound bites. you come in on Sunday morning and there'd be an Old Testament and a New Testament reading, and go on from that. And I never did really was able to put the two together. But this, the way we do it here, it makes sense. And to read the Bible as with me, a history book, the before and after story, and then the point that we're trying to make, that's been important. And then the realization that I don't need alcohol, a substance, to feel good. In fact, I feel a lot better when I'm not waking up with a headache. I'm not calling Buicks. I'm not doing all that bumping my head on the wall because I stumbled trying to get to bed. I don't have to worry about that.
So healthier physical habits. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Something that got to me was somebody wrote about the need in terms of long-term sobriety for daily affirmations, meaning how do you learn how to take good care of yourself? How do you learn how to say, I really didn't do this well today, but I really did this well. And maybe at the end of the day, if you have 5 fails, the fact of the matter is at the end of the day, God still loves you the exact same way he did before those 5 fails occurred.
Right.
And that goes back to that conversation about esteem. Like either you believe that you're responsible for building your esteem, or you believe, which I think is incredibly difficult, or I think you believe that God is simply instilling in you his esteem of saying, you're my son, you're priceless. I gave up my own son's life for you, Craig. He shed his blood for you. You have worth and value because I say so, not because of your performance. And those daily affirmations of anything like that, of who do I belong to? Why am I valuable? What is it that God is trying to say to me about how he loves me today, that are completely disconnected from performance? Because as men, we're absolutely performers. We love it. We freaking love it. And I think that you can speak to that. I mean that.
Well, to go back to one of the earlier ones, the risk reward piece of helping a hardcore habitual relapser figure out, that's a challenge. I want to help this guy. That makes me feel good. Okay, so it's selfish, but it's also turns out it could be a good thing. The catching me a little bit, getting a little deep on me here. Can you reframe the question?
Well, it's like the daily affirmations is that piece of going, what is it that I am going to use every day that helps me to know that I have value and that my serenity is important, that I deserve it. I think one of the hardest things with recovery is we tend, when we're sick, not to believe that we're worth saving. We tend to believe that, well, like in Jesus' case, it might have been the 2 guys beside him on the cross, but that if that was us, it would have never been us, because he would have never paid attention to us, because our lives are so screwed up. It would take a miracle for something to say that you have worth, and it's like on a day when everything goes wrong, every single thing goes wrong, every interaction goes wrong, you didn't feel like you're very productive, blah, blah, blah. Those daily affirmations become important because they speak to the lie of the enemy, which is, Craig, you don't really belong here. You don't really count for much.
Right.
You're not much of a man, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's what I'm talking about, is those, and whatever those are for you, whether those are Bible verses, whether those are phrases, recovery phrases, that I have learned that those recovery phrases, which I used to hate how they were I thought they were so rote, have become so important to me. Yeah. Because they reframe so many situations for me where that's an affirmation of the truth of what's happening. Right. The easy does it, used to hate it. I now get it, especially right now with what we've been going through the last 17 weeks. Man, I get it. Yeah. Like I never got that before. Mm-hmm. I get it. This COVID, what we've been through, I get that phrase more than anything, more than any time in my life since I learned it. And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. One, it's a little bit gimmicky, but I got a tattoo of, it'll be tomorrow's date in 2007. Got it right here. What happened was, my first meeting at the halfway house, one of the old hands said, make sure you put God between thought and action. Never really thought about it that way. But if God will direct me then to take the proper action. Well, I had this tattoo put there because that's where I reached for the beer cooler. Okay, so I see that. Wait, I got this much time. I don't want to start all over. That's 13 years is a long time. 4,700 days.
You look at that and you go, this is what God did for me.
This is why I'm here now, where I am, rather than living under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah.
If living at all.
Yeah. I think honesty is another piece of long-term sobriety, that I learn how to be honest with people, because I am not responsible for the way, boundaries teaches you that. I'm not responsible for the way somebody is going to respond to the truth that I am telling them. I'm responsible for telling them the truth. I'm responsible for telling them the truth. I'm telling them what is happening to me. You're not always going to like it, and that's not, that's okay, because it's not going to diminish. That doesn't create anxiety when I know that I'm simply telling you the truth. And truth telling is something that in the middle of our compulsion, man, it's completely absent. It's completely absent.
Yeah.
Like I could tell 100 people a day, somebody asks me, how are things going? when I was in the middle of just all kind of difficulty, go, it's fine. How are the girls? They're fine. How's everybody? They're fine. Everything's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, what was it like the first time I ever go, yeah, it's really not fine at all. This is like really, really difficult. And, I could use, do you need any help? Yeah, you know what I really do? I need you to tell me you can watch the girls for an hour, or whatever it was, but that thing of honesty, the clarity of that honesty is an enemy of our compulsion. Honesty is an enemy of our compulsion. Our compulsion doesn't like any facsimile whatsoever, any feature, any capacity of honesty. Our compulsion rejects it out of hand, because our compulsion is built on lying, and only lying, and our disease feeds on lying. So there's that. I know for you, because we know each other so well, but I mean, like you don't really debate whether you're going to be in weekly worship or not. Like that you gave up that debate every week,
right?
And you just come to worship.
Yes.
And I do think that like people forever like, I'm not really sure I'm not sure I'm a Christian. It's like, well, you might not be a Christian, but that has nothing to do with you coming to worship.
Right.
Well, I don't really know that I like any church. It's like, oh, I'm sure right now you won't. I mean, you'll be very judgmental of churches and people in churches and everything else, like the rest of us. I'm just saying, I'm advocating you start worshiping somewhere, whether it's Thursday night, and I would advocate Thursday and Sunday somewhere. Try some other churches, see which one seems like a match. I don't know which one's a match, but I know your resistance to church is going to be there, because your compulsion is looking for the place of kingship in your life, and it will resist you when you have any kind of a little inkling even of, well, maybe I would put God there as my higher power instead of my compulsion. There will be a fight, and you will hear yourself go, well, this church really is screwed up. This person said this, they did this. I didn't like the way they did this over here. But worship is a staple that obviously is rung true for you.
Right.
And the other thing I want to talk to you about was exercise. I know we had a talk one time, and I kind of asked you, like, what brought you to Cokesbury, to work for Cokesbury? And you said, I needed to find work that was going to keep me really, really active, physically active, and keep me, I think you said, like, keep me out of my head. And so I decided to keep doing this, and talk to me about exercise, what that means for you.
Well, the physiological response to exercise is where your blood starts hitting the hypothalamus, and you get endorphins, the marvelous little feel-good molecules that make you feel good. If it's after a run, a bicycle, a good, swift walk, lifting weights, vacuuming the house very, very quickly, and so that you maybe break a sweat a little bit, huff and puff a little bit. The physiological response is a reward to the exercise. The other thing that exercise does, it gives you, what are you going to do with the time that you used to spend drinking or whatever, on the computer or whatever? You got to have something to do with that time. Might as well make it productive. So if you can join a gym and you go down and you work out for 20 minutes, 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to work, 20 minutes to get back home. That's an hour. That's an hour less that you have to sit around and think about, I'm miserable, I need a beer, or again, whatever. And then the health benefit from after you've had years of, trying to kill your liver, expanding your heart, all that stuff starts reversing. It's like if you smoke and you quit, then your lungs start cleaning themselves.
Yeah.
You drink a lot of alcohol, it starts clogging up your liver. You stop, your liver starts getting clean.
It reverses the longer feature in compulsion of self-destruction, and it moves me to self-enhancement.
Exactly.
I think it's a very big deal. I think it's a bigger deal. I more and more think it's a bigger deal than with recovery than we think it is. I kind of do. I want to close with this. This is good stuff. I want to close with this piece of scripture. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. Philippians 1. Man, 4,700 plus days for you. It doesn't get a lot better than that, but I'm going to ask you to share the serenity prayer with us and close us out tonight.
All right.
Thanks so much.
I do. Thank you. The serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him in the next. Amen. Good night. See you next week.